We are more than a year out from the midterms, but Democrats are already facing an uphill climb. President Biden just met with Eric Adams, New York City's Democratic nominee for mayor, after he ran a tough-on-crime campaign. It comes as cities across the country are grappling with a serious surge in violent crime. Now, Republicans, like former President Trump, are seizing on that and trying to tie Democrats and their defund the police messaging to heading into next year, claiming that messaging is the reason for this spike in crime. It's very bad news for Democrats with a razor-thin House majority and a tie in the Senate. And several red states picking up congressional seats after last year's census. My next guest predicted the blue wave in 2018, and now she is sounding the alarm about a red one next year. Joining me now, Strike PAC co-founder and political scientist Rachel Bitecofer. Also with us, Michael Bender. He is a White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal and author of the new book out today. Frankly, we did then win this election, the inside story of how Trump lost. Rachel, Democrats want to rewrite the rules here. Republicans, they're already bending them. If Democrats do not fight back, what are the odds of a red wave?
They're excellent. As a trained political scientist, one of the most endearing and enduring trends in political science literature is the thing called the midterm effect, which is, more than 40 years of the president's party losing seats in that subsequent midterm election. So we call those fundamentals. And because of that trend, it's only been broken twice, in 98 and 2001. It does suggest that Republicans will be in a good position. And of course, my own research, which is, an unorthodox approach to understanding how Americans behave in a polarized environment, argues, look, if these days there's not a lot of swing vote in the electorate, there is some and it's important, but there's not a lot of it. What really matters is the coalitional turnout of each party, which includes their base and left or right-leaning independents. So, that's where that strategy and messaging really comes in. And as you were leading into the show, talking about defund the police, if you've got Republicans, tying every single Democrat, very few of whom actually support defunding the police, to that position, and Democrats are not effectively countering that message. And I don't mean by explaining that they don't want to defund the police. I mean by launching their own counter offense and really making the GOP pay the price for bringing up the topic of crime in the city, which is, of course, driven largely by poverty and access to firearms. Then, yeah, they're going to be at a competitive disadvantage because the Republican Party, we like to point their problems, but they're very shrewd at electioneering.
Then let's talk about the Republicans' shrewdness, because the problem with defund the police, while it might do the best work and while it might not remove law and order and instead improve it, I want to show you what half of our country sees. Take a look at this.
The rising crime and the left's push to defund police.
They want to get rid of the police, if not actually using the word defund because it's so radioactive. They think the police are the problem.
Still, no plans to push back on far left policies or the defund the police movement.
Republicans are really, really good at branding irrelevant of what the truth is. And they've got media networks that prop this up, media networks that are considered news. How do you fight this?
It's actually not that hard, Stephanie. The problem is you have to be able to see the solution and develop.
Well, it's not happening.
Right. Well, I mean, it's happening here. It's been happening on my Twitter thread through this entire trying 4 or 5 year period. I very clearly articulate to Democrats, this is what you do, right? Because the midterm effect is about, being a referendum on the in party. So if you go and design your campaign strategy and you utilize your own media networks in a strategic way, you can't just blunder through it, you have to design it, then you can make 2022 a referendum on the Republican Party's performance during the pandemic, during the economic collapse that came after. And of course, what's going on now, where we have a party that's so radical, it removed Liz Cheney from her leadership position because she would not toe the line on the big lie. But you're absolutely right. This is not something that the Democratic Party has any propensity to do within the organization. It has to be via a private, outside group. And that's why I say that Strike PAC is basically the SpaceX, of campaigns. It's going to space, but it's doing it a totally different way that I think is much more effective in terms of winning elections.
Michael, your book is extraordinary. You've got bombshells all over the place, specifically about Trump's last year in office. According to your book, he thought showing any sort of empathy for George Floyd would make him look weak. He wanted the military to crack skulls during the protests, and he reportedly said that Hitler did a lot of good things. On some level, we say, how do you come back from that? But does he have to come back from it? Given how strong he is right now and how much support he has, what does that tell you about many, many of the American people being cool with all that?
Well, he did win 75 million votes at the end of 2020. So, and remains strong with that base. I mean, the question for Trump moving forward is whether he's even going to run again. I mean, I think that's still very much an open question. I don't think he's decided that. And I think, first you have to get through 2022. And Republicans here have a choice. They can choose to redefine the party post-Trump or not. And I don't know how they're going to choose. But what I do know is that this book adds to that conversation, adds to the data points, and to make clear exactly who this president is, how he governed, and what his political styling is. And I think at the end of the day, what is most revealing here for Republicans,
let's be honest, those people who have that choice, they're not reading this book. They know who the president is, the former president, excuse me. And despite the fact that he lost the presidency, he lost the House, he lost the Senate, he remains their candidate of choice. He has an enormous amount of power. So while they have this choice to rebrand themselves, they're not doing it.
Well, I think two things.
You
One is I
spoke
think
to
there's
him,
a lot
he
of
knows
good
that.
things. Yeah, exactly, which is why he's attacking my book, because he knows how many people I've spoken to close to him who don't normally talk to journalists. And I think there is a lot of new information in here that actually adds to the picture of Donald Trump. I'll give you two examples. One is we know the story of chaos in this administration. That's well documented, across mediums in this country for years. What this book shows, really for the first time, is how dangerous the people around him thought he was for the country. And what this book does too is three things that I don't think any Trump books have done so far. Is it goes behind the scenes with the Trump administration inside the Oval Office, inside the campaign headquarters, where they spent $2 billion and were still chasing Biden in the final days. And also, and I think, frankly, most importantly here, is I was embedded for 2 years with a hardcore cross-section of the Trump base. And I tell their stories and why they show up to rally after rally after rally, and which starts to get to your question of why Trump supporters continue to stick with him, and after January 6th, why they continue to show up for rallies. There was thousands of people in Cleveland, thousands of people in Sarasota just last month.
But of course, Trump's base isn't enough to win. So the broader question is why people who know what he is, who know what he's done, still stand with him. Rachel, Michael, thank you both so much.